Settle in and cozy up. We're about to dig in. Let's get ready to go. Cheers. Welcome to our weekly coffee meeting. I'm excited that you're here. If you could have coffee with anyone in the world, who would it be? Dead or alive? My guess is that you picked somebody interesting or funny or talented, maybe even famous. Well, we're going to do the same thing right here, right now, with somebody interesting that you may or may not already know about. I started these weekly gatherings because I realized that I was meeting fabulous, interesting people, founders, CEOs, executives. I was getting all of these aha moments and little gems from them, but I realized, why should I be the only one getting all of this goodness? Way more seats should be at this table, which is why I decided every single week we should get together and we should sit down with these amazing people, steal all their secrets, and use it in our own lives. If you're new here, there's time for you to grab something warm or cold. If there's wine, I won't tell. And get settled in as we get ready to learn about interesting people with awesome jobs and lots of tips and tricks for us to steal. 2 pieces of homework before we start. 1, follow me here on LinkedIn if you haven't already. That way you can stay up to date as things happen. And number 2, get ready with questions because I want you to be able to ask your questions in real time here with me. That's right, you have a seat at this table too, which means I'm counting on you to ask amazing questions, make good points, and be in this conversation with me. Of course, you could be a bystander, but that's never as fun. If you haven't already, let me know where you're coming in from. Maybe what's in your cup while the weather is outside. I want to know exactly where you are in the world and exactly what you're experiencing so I can share where I am too. And then it can feel like we're in the same cozy coffee shop together. I'm finishing up making my tea now and I'm getting ready to settle in with you.
Well, hey there, friend. Happy Wednesday. It's so good to see you. I missed you last week, so I'm really excited that you made time to be here this Wednesday with me today. I hope you're having a great start to the week. I would love to hear how your start to the week is going. So if you haven't already, say hi in the chat. You'll be able to see me and Jeff and Giacomo and Liz already chatting away, but we want to hear from you too because we're a very friendly bunch here. If it is your first time joining us, welcome. Come on in. The water is fine. You might think that you can lean back, relax, and get a lot of goodness today. And that is true. You can do that. However, this is an interactive session. So if you have questions about sales, about dealing with the dreaded word no, about handling objections, about really anything, I want you to know that you have a voice in this discussion as well. So you can clack, 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 or click, click, click on your keyboard or any sort of writing device and let us know so that we can ask these questions in real time and join in the conversation. If you are joining on your favorite podcast app, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that's okay. You can ask follow-up questions later and we will get those answered as well. If you know me, which you probably do if you join multiple weeks in a row, you will know that one thing that I just double down on and harp on so much when it comes to business has to do with sales, and it not necessarily sales in the traditional way you think about sales, but the sale of yourself, which I think is probably the most important sale you will ever make. You are selling yourself to future employers. You are selling yourself to new opportunities. You want people to buy into the business of you for that promotion, for that award, for that honor, for that opportunity. And when it really comes down to it, it comes down to having a pristine reputation and just being a good human. And when I dig in and get into my soapbox about this topic, there is one person that I consistently think of, not only when it comes to sales, but when it comes to, again, just being that sort of outstanding human. And that is Dean. And hopefully you did some Google stalking about Dean beforehand. If not, I'll give you a little overview. But Dean is just an amazing executive. He's a coach, he's a mentor, he does leadership development and really focuses on sales training is where he really kind of changed the game, honed his craft at John Wiley and Sons. So back in the day when we all used to have books, if you are younger than 21, you probably don't know about those things, but we used to have books, and that's what they did at Wiley and Sons. And Dean was in charge of sales. So all of your favorite retails, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Costco, other national chains where books are sold. That was Dean's job, getting your favorite reads to you. So he has since expanded, has over 14 LinkedIn learning courses. And I am proud to say he is the reason why I myself am a LinkedIn learning instructor now, because Dean was the one who sort of lured me in to the love of LinkedIn, which I still have today. So wherever you are in the world, I hopefully Ryan and Liz and Jeff, you can help me lift your cup full of God knows what. And welcome Dean to our coffee chat.
Wow, what an introduction, Kim. Can I record that and keep that? That's so nice of you. It's great to see you again. And when you say that I got you to LinkedIn, I said, go find LinkedIn. You're perfect. And I remember when you did your Entrepreneurship Foundations course, that was such a big success. And it's amazing now all the other courses that you have in the library. And
I will slowly, hopefully get up to Dean status, because you are so well beloved as not only a LinkedIn learning instructor, but just such an amazing champion and mentor. And I feel like everyone that I talk to is always like, oh, Dean is the best. And I'm like, I know, he really is the best, which I think kind of filters into one of my first questions for you, which is, when did you realize that reputation and kind of having other people say things like Dean is the best was going to be helpful for your career?
I think we all learn in our lifetime and in our careers that at the end of the day, we just have to be ourselves. I think when we graduate from college, we try to over-impress maybe, or we think we have to act a certain way. And then I finally realized that was too difficult, that we just have to be ourselves. There's a salesperson on the call here with us today named Scott Donald, who's very similar to me. He's based out in the western part of Canada, another sales executive. And he's a very similar style as I have, of just being genuine and being authentic. And it's a lot easier that way. You're the same way, Kim. You're outgoing, you're fresh, and you're just not trying to fake it. What you see is the real Kim, and what you see is the real Dean.
Well, and I think one of the things that you really focus on, I forgot to mention, by the way, that Dean also wrote a book in 2019, right before the pandemic hit, which is amazing, sort of distills all of his learning down in physical form. And it's called Mastering the Basics, Simple Lessons for Achieving Success in Business. So I highly recommend that everybody go check out that book. But one of the things that you sort of talk about in the book is really this coming from this place of helping others. So I think sometimes when we think about sales, it's more of this approach of like getting people to spend money as opposed to this opportunity. And do you see that only expanding with your career as time goes on?
I think that's so critically important. And it's one of my lessons is number one is like, be good to people. And how hard is that? The world would be a lot better if we were all treating each other better and we're good to people. And if you're not trying always to get something for yourself and looking out for somebody else, trying to help somebody else solve their problems or help guide them better, or if you're not the right solution, get them pointed in the right direction that you can help them. And I just find that, unfortunately, that comes pretty naturally to me, and I've gotten better at it through the years. And it's just a philosophy of, being good to people. You're good at it, of smiling and say hello. These are what I call the basics of business and the basics of life, of helping others and smiling, being cordial, friendly. And you had a post a few weeks ago talking about sending thank you notes, a lost art. And how difficult is that? Yet it makes such an important impression on people when we all do those things.
I'm glad you brought up this concept of soft skills because I will speak for myself. I think soft skills were also something that was just waning with the development of texting, with the development of email. But I think COVID for me, it was the nail in the coffin. Like people came back to work, in my opinion, like not knowing how to act. Like to your point, like smiling, saying hello, shaking people's hands, standing up when somebody enters the room, thank you notes. It's like basic like decency or cordialness or manners have gone like out the window. And I'm curious, what is the anecdote to that? Or how do you think that people should be, I guess, like redeveloping these muscles that maybe have atrophied after not being used for so long?
Well, I'm embarrassed that some people act the way they do, and it is these are skills that you learn from your parents or you learn when you grow up, and somehow some people, they just forget about it and they don't realize how essentially important it is. I often say, I was a B student in college. I was a 3.0, and I got to be a 3.0 because I got an A in bowling my senior, last semester. So I was able to round up to 3.0. So how do I differentiate myself from all the other salespeople, all the other business people that are out there? And we all have a good product or service to sell. It goes to your point of, how as a person can you differentiate and be good and be accepted by your buyers and clients? And these are the basic skills of showing up on time. How many times have you had a meeting where people are 5 minutes late or 2 minutes late and they think nothing of it? Sorry, I'm late. Or they don't say thank you at the end of the meeting, or they don't send some follow-up notes, or they say they're going to do something and they don't follow through on it. You don't need a Harvard MBA to do that. And I think as a salesperson, these are the skills that I talk about. I mean, we've all got good products or service to sell. So how do you differentiate yourself from everybody else? You show up on time, you have your presentation well buttoned up, you've taken time to listen, and you don't talk as much like I'm doing right now. You talk less. And these are things that, from social skills, people skills, that's the number one on my list when I've looked for hiring salespeople, is the importance of emotional intelligence. It's being aware, showing empathy, showing understanding. You and I have a good friend, Gemma Lee Roberts, who talks a lot about emotional intelligence and how important that is. And for a salesperson, that's a lesson I think everybody can go back to and learn a little bit more about the importance of emotional intelligence.
Oh, 1,000%. And I will say one thing as you're, being on time and saying thank you. Another thing that I think people can do to stand out is end a meeting on time. Oh. We have all been at a doctor's office or the dentist, and you're waiting and you're waiting. You're like, how are they, how are they so off schedule, or how are they running so behind? And it's because other people, to your point, came in late. Yeah. Or so as much as you can, I think when you're meeting with someone, it is, your job to kind of watch the clock. And it's your job to really manage that time together. People can always extend, but I think even just the simple act of saying, hey, I know we have a hard stop at whatever time, 2:00. It's 5 minutes till 2:00. I want to make sure that we wrap up. That to me always goes such a long way.
Oh, absolutely. That goes to the training and coaching we get from our managers and leaders, and learning that if you have if I have a half an hour in your office or on a video call with you, Kim, it's not waiting for the last 5 minutes to get to the punchline or get to the meat of the presentation. It is utilizing that half an hour, and that you do finish at 28 after. There's nothing that makes a client happier than to finish early, to get all the information out, to get all the questions answered, and have that done ahead of time. When I was in the corporate world, I was a big stickler for, if the meeting started at 2:00, we started at 2:00 and we ended at 2:29. I did not want meetings started, and everybody always showed up on time because they knew Dean was a pain in the neck with that. So, but these are, again, is this a Harvard MBA course? Do you learn this at the Fisher School in Indiana? You get the bits and pieces, but these are things that you learn with Coffee with Kim. In the recent, all the episodes you have of the people you talk to, you're hearing bits and pieces of the things that you and I are talking about right now.
Well, and I think you're really kind of digging into the nuance. And I think one of the nuances that you pointed out earlier was so much of sales is about offering solutions, or if you realize that you're not the right solution, getting that person to somebody who is the solution. I always use the example in a grocery store. If somebody comes up to me and says, "Where's the milk?" I can either say, "Oh, the milk is on, aisle 6 and I'm happy to help you." Or if I don't, say, "I'm sorry, I don't know, but let's go find somebody who works here because they're going to be able to help you find that." And I think doing that same thing in sales is so important. But I'm glad that Jeff brought up this sort of nuanced point. What if you're not in a traditional sales experience where it's you trying to get somebody to buy a product or service, but rather you are trying to get people to buy into an idea, or in this case, an investment, if you are an entrepreneur? Like, where does that nuance differ?
The nuance there is you have to develop some credibility. These are foundational skills of being a salesperson, and one of the pillars is credibility. You just can't come on the marketplace on Friday afternoon and say, "This is my investment," or "Here's my opportunity." You have to develop some history and some background. So credibility, a reputation, integrity, and character. Those are pillars of trying to develop a strategy for an investment. Having people recommend you, having people doing referrals for you, saying that I trust Kim Kaup, I trust Dean Carroll. I'm not going to invest a lot of money if I don't know you and if I don't see your history. Are you visible in investment sources? Let's say in the investment community, or in our cases, Kim, are you active on LinkedIn so that you can see the posts that you have? You can learn a lot about Kim Kaup by just scrolling the posts that you've done over the past 6-8 years. You learn your history and how you've developed and how you've grown. Have you taken that time as a salesperson, if I'm working on an investment strategy, to build my credibility in the marketplace? Doesn't happen overnight. This has become a lot easier for me now that I've been doing this for a number of decades. But when you're first starting, that's where referrals, networking, and recommendations go a long way to opening those doors.
Yeah, I think that there's nothing better than a warm intro. That to me is like your spidey senses are immediately lowered because there is that sort of like, oh, Dean walked him into the room, or Dean walked her into the room. And that feels, as Matt is saying, that it gives that personal trust. It gives that like stamp of credibility, which I think is really important.
Well, you're a perfect example. I mean, you graduated from college, you founded a business. You had to start out. You started off with nothing, correct? I mean, you built it. So how did that happen? You got some recommendations. You had a great product and service to sell and market with, but you had people that trusted you and believed in you, and you built off of that, correct?
Yeah, no, I think it also helped that I went into corporate for almost 3 years. I think that just being with other humans, I was actually just at a lunch yesterday and I was talking to this friend and I said, I get that everybody wants to work from home and I get that it's, easier 5 days a week to sit on your couch and click clack on your computer. But for me, the magic happened. And for me, so much of my learning was in person, especially in those early years. Like I got taught. If anybody's ever had a dog, I don't know if you have a dog, Dean, but I have always learned that if you're going to get a puppy or a new dog, you kind of let the other dogs train the puppy and the puppy learns from the other dogs. And that's a dog example. But I do think that it also works for people. Like you learn how to act or you learn your executive presence or whatever by being around other executives. You don't learn it on your couch in your pajamas.
I found COVID to be, we all found that difficult, but working from home and being, at the time my office was in the basement of my home. I've now upgraded, so I'm now on the second floor. But there's the silly line, management through walking around. I love walking around the building at Wiley, for example, and just stopping at people's office and chatting and learning and seeing what people were working on and seeing if I could help. That's very hard from home, and that interaction, and you're not seeing, the interpersonal communication, and you're not seeing the smile directly. You're seeing a video smile. I mean, it works for us right now, but it is. I am a believer in interpersonal and seeing people face to face. I think those days are probably gone. I have a course where I talk about that. You know, the sales are different than as of March 2020. Life in sales is different, but I think the hybrid approach needs to be there, where we are in touch and in face-to-face situations, in across a desk or across a conference table, because that's where you really learn. You see how the executive acts, and then you can really learn, are they giving you corporate speak, or are they genuine and authentic? Sometimes that's tough in a video call to really see that and read that. So I hope a hybrid system comes back again, in corporations, so that we do have this type of interaction again.
I could not agree more. And like to Britta's point, so much of it depends on what industry you're in as well, because a lot of these industries, they are tactile. In order to be a plumber, you got to get near a pipe, preferably with some liquid in it. You need to kind of get that tactile experience. I feel like one of the things that I kind of deal with the most, and probably you get asked about the most, I would imagine, is dealing with rejection and dealing with the word no. And I think so much of traditionally how we would deal with the word no is you'd be able to offer counterpoints, or it would sort of be like this in person, in real time, like we're zigging, we're zagging, we're like trying to come to a point or an agreement or get somewhere together. And I'm curious what your thoughts are now, since so much has moved digital. So for people that might be hearing rejections via email or hearing rejections via Slack, does your approach to handling those objections change based on the method that they're coming across?
Well, first off, any sales trainer who says, they overcome rejection very easily, they're not telling you the truth. Rejection is tough. and there's no magic formula with this, whether it was 40 years ago when I first got into sales, or now when I get an email that says no thanks, or no response at all. It's tough. And it is part of what we do as salespeople. It's what we do in life. Nobody wants to hear no, whether it's going out, asking a friend to join you for dinner, and then say, no, I really don't want to, or, meet me to play tennis, or no, or in a business situation when somebody says no, we take it too personally. Of course we do. Somebody's rejected us. Even the word reject is so negative, right? The way I've overcome that is by saying, you know what, I'm moving on. I go back and I say, well, what did I miss? I know you're not happy with my proposal. I know it's not working. I thought I checked off all the boxes. I answered these questions. We were doing this. You said you needed it by this date, or you wanted this proposal by that date. Clearly, I must have misinterpreted. So you try to ferret out, what are the real reasons for the no? But I have become more, I'm not as, I don't go back to the well as much as I used to. I now am at a point where I say, okay, I'm moving on. I'm going to try to work with Kim and not this person who's always saying no. My patience for the no people has waned as I've gotten older, because some people enjoy not making a decision. And it's a trick, as you learn in business throughout the years. There are some people they're never going to push the button and say yes. Now, it doesn't mean you give up and you never burn a bridge. You never, tell them to go jump in a lake. But the other side is there's a point where you have to say, I'd rather work with Kim than I'd rather work with this person over here. And that's a skill set that is learned. But for any trainer that tells you rejection is easy and you're going to go back and fight and go back and be aggressive and never take no for an answer, that's not the way it works. And, so it's trying to dig in a little deeper, asking more questions. Looking for alternative sources. That's why LinkedIn, I think, is so important, where you're meeting people, not directly, and you're able to have conversations that may not be specifically about your product or service, but you're able to communicate. And I mean, you're a top voice on LinkedIn. You're hearing people from all over the place. And that's a great marketing handle for you and your business, your work, and everything. And for me too, I just find being active in alternative sources versus some blind email that's going in or some blind messaging on LinkedIn. You know what? I'm changing the subject a bit here, but we all cringe when you click, connect with somebody, and 15 minutes later, it's like, "Hi, I've got a great new website I'd like to put together for you," or "I have this service I wanted." I cringe. I feel so bad for these people because who trained those people? Who told them that's going to work? Did that ever work? No, it doesn't work. And people are going home and in tears because that's rejection, that you're just setting yourself up for rejection.
No, I totally agree with your point, and with James's point of, sometimes you just got to move on, or instead of move on, move up. It's not the right fit. Maybe another time, to your point, instead of checking back in with them, incessantly every month, maybe you check in once every 6 months, have your needs changed. Maybe I could be of service, help you in some way. But I think one thing that LinkedIn and just technology has been able to do is there are more fish in the sea. I referenced earlier when you were at Wiley, back in the day, as we always say, there were only certain places that you could buy a book, right? Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, but that was it. Like there was a finite amount of places that you could get books. And so you had to harp on those people, they had to sell your book, or else, there was nowhere else. But I think now with technology, oh my gosh, there's a million ways you can get books. Libby, Audible, Kindle, Amazon, bookshop.org. I mean, it's out of control how people sell directly on their websites, like D2C shipping, Etsy, it's crazy. So I always tell people, like, now with technology, you're not like limited, like I only have these customers. There are other fish in the sea. We're in a huge ocean of lots of fish, and there's other fish. It's not just like a very small subset. So I'm so glad you brought that up. If someone is like sitting here right now and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Dean, like this is me. Like I've been harping on these same customers, or I've been harping on these same accounts." What advice do you give someone who wants to like widen their net or like widen their scope, but they just don't know how, or they don't know where to start?
When you widen your scope, you also need to do more focused research. So what I mean by that is, and you could have a list. In the old days, we'd have a list of, let's say, 1,000 founders, people like you, and you'd all get an email, you'd get a letter, you'd get a phone call or whatever. Now it's actually doing research on LinkedIn and on the internet, doing your research about a Kim Kalp and saying, well, what is her background? What is her focus? What is she doing? It's being even more prepared than we were 10 years ago. If we're still selling like we did 10 years ago, you're behind the 8 ball. If I show up to you and say, well, Kim, what's your background? Boom, get lost. Get out. That's, or Kim, what did you used to do? No, I have to know everything. It's all available. But Kim, I'd like a little bit more about the business that you ran and what you did in New York City, and then when did you move to Austin, Texas to start this new business? Dean has taken his time to do his research. That immediately begins to develop some reputation and credibility because you've taken the time to do the work. So for people who are looking to expand their reach, it's looking also at the same time to focus your targeting of your reach. So it's for years I've said the important part of selling is planning, preparation, and research. How do you separate yourself from Dean Carroll, other salesperson? It's by taking that extra time to learn about your customer before you even met them.
1,000%. And I always, Liz is saying, a bigger seat means more competition. Liz, I have like sort of a contrarian thought on this, which is, I think your competition can be doing the homework for you. I mean, I know I've used that a lot, where I go see who is my competition using. I study them like a crazy person. And then I figure out, where are we stronger? Where can we improve? Where are they having, some dips in their relationship? And that way I can go in saying, well, you can stay with the person you're with. That sounds great. Or, to Dean's point, I've done all this research. Here's where we do things differently. Here's where we're, better or more outstanding or more helpful. And so sometimes I think that that competition, at least for me, can also fuel inspiration about future customers of mine.
A lot about sales is how do we make the life of the people we're trying to work with easier? How do we make them more money? How do we make their life easier? How do we make it less complicated? And how do we make them look good within their own organization? Our job is to make the buyer or the client look better, not for us to sell something. It's to help them. And if we can focus on that, it's that whole thing, the buyer first mentality. We are so trained and embedded to, I got to practice my presentation. I have to have my 10 steps. I have to do the close. I have to handle objections. Then we forget about, it's not about us. It's about our client. How do we make their life easier? And again, that takes time to learn. It takes confidence. And it goes back to the list of what do I look for in salespeople? It's not cockiness. It's not the stereotype of a salesperson that the stereotype of a salesperson I never like to hire, that aggressive and in your face. What I'm looking for is somebody who's confident, but believes in their abilities. You're a good example. You're very confident, Kim, but you're very laid back in a comforting way of, your personality comes across the confidence, yet somebody that I can actually talk to. And that's what makes for a great salesperson.
Well, and I think what also makes for a great salesperson is, to your point, as my mother always said, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And if he wanted us to talk more, he would have given us 2 mouths and 1 ear. So really, you got to go with what the God intended, which is listen as much as possible. And I think some of the best salespeople I know, to your point, Dean, are amazing listeners. Not talkers.
Takes a while to learn that. We're so excited to sell and we're so excited to present. And we also know our livelihood depends on it, that we're ready to, hi, Kim, and you're ready to jump. Okay, let's go. Right. And so it takes practice to say, Kim, what are some of the projects you're working on? And let you speak. Right. And that's a learning curve. So it goes to good salespeople want to be coached. They want to learn. They want to be trained. We all despise role playing. Let's practice this, but it is so important to do it. And that's where you can learn. And whether you're 20, 40, or 60, you're always learning new skills. And like I said before, if I was selling the way I was doing when I first got in the business, oh, baby, it's totally different. Totally different. And, the basics are there, but it's much more fast paced, and buyers have shorter attention spans. They don't want to get rid of the baloney, get to the facts. Right?
1,000%. I'm so excited that Jen is here, because normally Jen has a meeting during this time. So I'm very excited that she canceled that meeting and came to join us today. But I love this question that she poses, and I'd love to hear from you, Dean. If the goal is to really be that problem solver, what are some phrases or key sayings or key questions that you use? Because obviously, if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, or even if I know somebody fairly well, it's hard for maybe you to approach like, well, what are you struggling with? It's kind of like when somebody asks me like, oh, how are you? My life could be burning down. And my response will be like, I'm fine. Things are really great. Meanwhile, they're burning down. So, how do you ask these questions, or how do you uncover, like, how do you even start problem solving? Because most people, they're not spilling their problems right off the bat. So what are some phrases or techniques that you use for that?
You'll hear sales trainers say that we need to uncover pain points by asking questions, and you hit the nail on the head. If I say how you're doing, how can I help you solve your problems? You're never going to say anything. You don't want people to know. But if I've done my research beforehand, I can say, Kim, I read in one of the journals, I read online that you're developing a new business and that you're going into X, Y, and Z. That enables you to open up to talk about what you may be talking about, this new business you're in. Oh, Dean, it's really exciting, but you know what? I've got some timetables I've got to reach, or I've got some real tough competition. Oh, what type of things are you encountering? It's reversing the question and reversing things. You don't ask what's your problem, because again, no one's going to tell you. But it's talking about your business. whether it's acquisitions you made or it's new fields you're getting into, goes back to doing research and learning about the clients you're going to. If you step in blind, you're never going to be successful. So it's how do you find out about people? And there's so many ways to do that now in this day and age, from LinkedIn to other sources that you can target your questions about their business rather than about their problems. And then it leads to a conversation. Uncovering pain points doesn't work. Engaging with your customer works. What you're trying to become is a trusted advisor. That doesn't happen on the first call. It doesn't happen on the second call. It's going to somebody and learning about them to see that you can be there for as they develop their new strategies and businesses. You can help them out along the way.
Well, and I think just knowing that it's a long game. So to Jeff's point, like you can't just start problem solving 3 seconds into the conversation, even if that's your personality type. If you're like, boom, 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 I'm a problem solver. You really have to develop that relationship and learn to listen. And it might be 2, 3, 4, 5 phone calls or 5 meetings before you can really break into that. So
Jeffrey, your point there is spot on. We all want to do that. We hear a line, the line is thrown out, and that's, again, it's the salesman mentality. We just want to jump right in and solve. Okay, I know what you need. Boom. That's just, we're ready to go because we've practiced, we've trained. And Jeff, that's a point that we all fall into, is jumping right in and solving in 2 minutes. Ooh, and it's hard to fight that, but that's something that we have to do. Continue to learn, continue to ask more questions. And again, that goes a long way to developing credibility with your buyer, that you're not jumping right into solve it, because that may not be the right answer.
No, and I think so much of it, I would love your thoughts on this. So I was having coffee, this was like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and my friend and I got in a little battle over, which approach is better. I won't tell you whose side was what, but basically one approach was using yourself as an example. So if you're going in with a meeting with someone, you that sort of mentality of like, I go first. So like, Dean, something that I used to struggle with was XYZ, and then saying, something along the lines of like, what are you struggling with? But kind of you going first, and we were getting this discussion, but almost using like this guilt complex of like, I shared first. Now you feel compelled to share back because I have gone first. And the other side of the argument was that you shouldn't do that because it sort of corners people or makes people feel like they have to share. So I'm curious, have you heard of this before? What do you think about this sort of technique?
Well, this is where the best salespeople are good readers of people. It goes back to emotional intelligence. There are some buyers that you go up and you start telling your story first. It's, I don't want to hear your story. This is about me. There are other buyers you might work with. They say, you know what, I've encountered this situation in my company, and this is how we had to handle it. I wonder if this might be something that we could target and customize for you. So it's being able to read your buyer. There is again, this is what's changed through the years. There's no cookie cutter answer. And I'm giving you no cookie cutter answer to your question right now. Because I'm a good
there's not.
But it's how I work with you is going to be a lot different than I'm going to deal with Jen Whitmer or deal with Shelby. Every person that you work with has their own style, personality, patience level. I know, for example, Kim, I probably, if I was trying to present something to you, I know that I could talk for a few minutes about personal things, what's going on in your life, but then you would want to get into business. I don't have time for small talk, but you're friendly, you would be cordial, but I would know there's probably a 3-minute period where you would say, Dean, let's get moving. I don't have an hour to chit chat.
Maybe 5.
5. Okay, 5. But right? Am I right? I mean, you've got a busy day. And, so but there are some buyers that's got to jump right in. We got to talk about it. So it's being able to assess and read your buyer. I like telling personal stories. I like telling, that's the whole storytelling approach to sales. Of what's happened with the customer, and what's happened with me, and people learn from that. And there's an art form to that. You've had guests on talk about that, and I think you're going to have someone in the future talk about that Mary Rogow, I believe, is going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. And storytelling is a great way to see what's going on in other companies and what you've seen and what you've experienced.
Well, and I think reading, not only reading people is so important, but like read the room in terms of like, if you're meeting with somebody at 4 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to know when you're scheduling stuff, when is a good time to be bringing stuff up. Really kind of like that, I think, is one of the most important skills in business, is reading the room, reading who it is that you're meeting with and what the vibes are, which again, to your point, there's no one right answer. It's totally a variable. Well,
I've worked with buyers through the years. It's the Scott Donald's met with buyers like this through the years. They're like this. It's that stone face, and that's their skill, is they don't give any reaction, and you're trying to read them, and it is very difficult. And reading buyers is something that has become an art form, and it's similar. Kim, now you do keynote speaking, and if you can't read your audience and shift gears mid keynote, if everybody in the front row is doing this, then you've got a problem, right? And it's being able, or they're like this, or we've certainly been able to read things. I mean, I found that very difficult early stages of COVID, when you would have a Zoom call, you'd have 20 faces on the screen, and then half of them looked like they were, oh my goodness sakes, right? So you got to read that. And it's the same with the individual, not with the buyer. You're easy to read.
I know, for better or for worse, my facial expressions are quite awful, actually, in business, because my co-founder Abby will tell me all the time that she's like, "Well, your face answered before you did again," and I'm like, "Ooh, must work on that."
Yeah, it's who you are. I mean, it's it's one of those things about sales. That was one of your first questions. How do we, what do we have to be as salespeople? We are who we are. Kim, it's hard to change your personality and your style. You're a very visual person. You're an outgoing person. If you were all stone faced, I would think there was something wrong. So that's who you are. I'm with the hands. I'm always doing this and I'm doing that, and that's so. I can't change that. I try to calm things down a bit, but this is how we are. And as salespeople, it's how do we use the strengths that we were given? I'm verbal. I'm outgoing. I like to network. I like to be with people. I use that to my advantage. Some people are much more serious, and they use that to their advantages. So it's coming up with your SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What are your strengths? What are your top 3 strengths? What are your 3 weaknesses? And for me, going back to my weakness is still, I'm talking. Be quiet.
No, Dean, that's the whole point, is you're talking and imparting your wisdom on us. And I will have you impart more wisdom for Giacomo's question of, where do you see the future of sales? What do you see in terms of, I won't even ask the next 5 years, because God knows we all might have flying cars by then, but at least in the next year or two, what are some things that you're seeing, maybe with the clients that you're working with, or the coaching groups, or the companies that you're still attached to?
The days of salespeople working on their own are over. I mean, that ended 4 years ago. I mean, the silos of me, but when I first started, we were salespeople, marketing was over here, operations was over there, and we all worked by ourselves, and we never divulged information of what customers we were working with, or what our budgets were, our sales targets were. Now, what I see the future is collaborative selling, and you have to go into a customer with your operations, development, business teams, financial teams, and marketing, and you do have the head of somebody who's leading that charge, which could be the salesperson, it might be a marketing person, whoever, but sales is a collaborative effort at this point. Sales will always be there in my mind. It's not going away, but it is constantly being refined and being done differently and constantly being improved. But I see the days of, I got to go in with a team approach of working with a customer. And I have to know my product inside and out, but if I don't, and when I can't, I have to have the operations or manufacturing teams or whatever, the software developer there with me. And that's why you're seeing companies now. I mean, 10 years ago, there wasn't sales enablement and there wasn't customer success. And, these are all teams now to support a customer. 20 years ago, it was the sales team, and it was marketing, and it was customer service. And now there's a whole network of how we develop and build customers. We didn't use the word business development or sales development 20 years ago. So the sales business is becoming more specialized in how we do things, and our expertise must be better than it used to be, and we must collaborate and bring in all the parts of our organizations that we work with. So we have to be better than we ever were.
Yeah, and I think you touched on such a strong point here, which it's no longer siloed. You're not alone on the boat. There's lots of people, and it's teamwork, and it's utilizing everybody's different strengths. So I'm curious for you. I mean, obviously, you've been a LinkedIn Learning instructor for years. You're not only on the platform, but again, you're constantly learning. I think that that's one of the things that is so amazing about you. You're constantly on this quest for knowledge. So I'm curious, who are some individuals, or what are some maybe LinkedIn Learning courses that you've taken recently or you've discovered that you yourself are learning from?
Well, it's amazing the past few years, right? ChatGPT. You just had an author on last week or 2 weeks ago who has a LinkedIn Learning course. I watched that. I mean, we have to learn, and I'm using ChatGPT, but it's how do I do it better? How do I do it? I follow a lot of people on LinkedIn. Well, the courses I take, I've actually took a construction management course of all things. So there's a guy named Jim Rogers. Jim Rogers is an instructor on LinkedIn Learning. He is amazing. I mean, I don't need to learn construction management. I wanted to see his style of teaching. And he's so engaged. He can make, he's got a course on concrete. Do I really need to know about concrete? No, but he's so good. Now, did I watch the whole course? No. But what I said, how does he's got 300,000 global learners for some of his courses. He's doing something right. And I said, well, what am I learning from that? Well, he's engaging. He makes a difficult subject so listenable and trainable from that. So ironically, I did do that. I like Tatiana Kolovu from the Kelley School of Business in Indiana. She's a superstar. I'm from communication. She has a course on, which I recommend everybody, on elevator pitches. It's 3.5 million global learners. It's amazing, right? So good. Yeah. Oh, Gemma Lee Roberts, is another one. Jessica Chen. I mean, these are people Aaron Shrimpton you've met. I mean, you learn from other instructors and other people how they do things, and you learn the topic along the way. I'm constantly amazed that I'm watching leading business school professors teach courses on LinkedIn Learning. And it's part of my subscription to LinkedIn Learning that I have access to people like Todd Dewitt, Chris Croft, Dave Crenshaw, and the list goes on and on. 18,000 courses, and these, and I'm getting it for a subscription. I'm not getting paid by LinkedIn to say this right now. I'm just saying what I'm learning. I'm learning from you. I mean, this is your entrepreneurship courses, your courses about Shelby Merriweather's course on how we do presentations like this. I mean, that's a great course that she did. So these are, if I'm sitting down saying I'm done, I don't need to learn anymore, I'm already falling behind. Bingo, right?
No, I totally agree. And listen, I'm a Costco card holder. I'm a value shopper. I love deals. I love sales. I am also not getting paid, but I will also say LinkedIn Learning has been such a deal for me in terms of, to your point, you do get access to so much knowledge and so many high quality people for a price that I think is, they could charge double and I'd probably still pay it. Don't tell them that.
Don't tell them that. No, let's keep quiet on that.
Let's edit that out of the podcast version, but let's not tell them that they should raise their prices, but I would probably still pay it. But I'm curious, okay, if obviously, around these parts, we love us some homework. So if you could give all of us homework for the rest of this week, going into the weekend. It could be about sales, but honestly, to your point, it's such a wider topic area now. What would your homework assignment for us be?
Find ways to do less. And what I mean is, as we learn more and grow more and develop more, we keep adding things on our plate to do. I have always said to people, we need to take the time to step back and do spring cleaning. Now, the people who I've worked with through the years, if they're hearing this right now, they're all laughing because I drove them crazy with this. You have to find a time to, whether it's how many apps do you have on your phone? I mean, why do you need 50 apps? Get rid of the ones that you don't use anymore. Get rid of the ones that are just taking up space. Find ways to make your life simple. I have a funny story about somebody let me use what's the writing tool? It's like a tablet that you write with, and it's I can't remember the name of it now.
Like
Remarkable, where you write on a tablet and it takes your writing and it puts it on your computer. I said, isn't this cool? This is great. And I started using it. And then I realized I was doing double the amount of work. So it's sort of like I have this is like the Remarkable, except this is Dean's version. It's hi Kim. So it's like I want to just take notes. Why am I overcomplicating things? So I'm a big believer in the lesson is, and it's a book that I just was sharing with somebody. It's called The Power of Simplicity, and keep it simple. So everybody's homework assignment. Find ways to get rid of 2 projects or 2 things you're dealing with right now that are taking up too much time, or 2 customers that are driving you crazy and you're not going to deal with them. Put them on the back burner for a while and find somebody new. Step back on Friday at 3:00 and regroup and say, what am I going to do next week that's different?
It's so true. Trim the fat. Trim the fat like you would on a steak. Just
now you sound like my doctor. Now trim the fat, Dean, but I'm trying.
Well, you get a little bit of fun in there. This has been so great. You are such a wealth of knowledge. Where can people keep learning from you, keep learning all of the wealth of information that you have for us?
Well, I'm active on LinkedIn. That's the place where you find me, and Dean Carroll at LinkedIn. And I post a couple of times a week, and I talk about some of my courses, or I just talked about, there was a gathering of LinkedIn learning professors, instructors in New York City recently. That's where I met Shelby Merriweather for the first time. I met a couple of others instructors for the first time. So invigorating. And I posted and I talked about that. And so you'll find a few times a week a video or an article from me. And please connect and follow me.
I love that. And I will say for anybody else who is keeping it simple, and maybe part of that is stepping away from the computer or stepping away from devices, highly, highly, highly recommend Dean's book, Mastering the Basics. If you want a kind of non-tech paper version, if you're getting away from screens, that's a great one to have over the weekend. Well, thank you, Dean, so much for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, Jim and Giacomo and Andrew and Rich and Matt and Scott, everyone. I can't list them all fast enough, but thank you. Dean and I know that you guys are really busy people, so spending your Wednesday here with us means a lot. So thank you. And thank you, Dean.
Kim, it's always great to see you. What a treat. It's been 6 years, I think, since we first met. So I'm glad we're still friends and staying in touch. It's energizing for me to be with you.
This is the best. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of the week and the weekend. And as always, you can head over to coffeewithkim.com. And there will be a plethora of information about future sessions that we have, and also calendar invites for you to hold it. I'm one of those people that if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. So if you are also like me, that might be a good service for you. Or if you subscribe on any of your favorite podcast networks, you can just search Coffee with Kim and hit subscribe, and this will pop up in your podcast as well. So thanks so much, everybody.